always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
Hey, Mike Shimwell here, host of the Shun Podcast. If you want to tell your story, buy a t-shirt, maybe some merch, maybe get some additional resources, you can do so at shunpodcast.com. If you want professional help to heal and recover from life in a cult so that you can figure out who you are and what you want out of this life, or maybe you just want to figure out where the patterns from the past might still be showing up in your life today, you can find help at exjwhelp.com. Again, that's exjwhelp.com. And every episode of the Shun Podcast has helpful links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. So if you need something, you can always look there. And now let's meet our guest.
My name is Shayna. I'm 31 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness and I am shunned.
All right, Shayna. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was born in one of 5 children. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And where were you in the pecking order there?
Right in the middle.
Ah, the middle child, the forgotten one, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So you were born in there. So then were your parents always witnesses? Like were your oldest siblings also born in?
All of my siblings were. My dad was not. He came into the religion when he met my mom, which I do have an older half brother, my dad's son from his first marriage, which I don't really know him. And he was obviously born before my mom came into the picture. But then my mom, I would say more that she was born or raised around it. She had a very abusive she grew up in a very abusive household. Her dad was like a non-functioning alcoholic, a big smoker. Her mom was, from what I understand, just in constant denial. My mom had, there was 6 of them, and she was the oldest daughter. She had an older brother, but she grew up in a very volatile, violent household, and her and all of my aunts are still in the religion. Both of my uncles are out. So yeah, and then I don't know how far back it went on her side. I really don't know a lot of history on my parents' sides. It's not something they really ever talked about. I know that my dad has a sister, and I've been trying to figure out ways to find out who she is, get a hold of her, reach it, because I've never met her. Both of his parents died before I was born. My mom's parents died before I was born. So yeah, as far as their history, I don't know a lot of it. Like I said, my dad came into the religion because of her. They got married when she was 19 and he was 27. And then then we were all born and raised in it. My dad was an elder through a bit of my childhood. And my mom was a pioneer. So it was they were pretty strict about the religion.
I can imagine. So your dad, so your mom's family were witnesses. The family she came from was witnesses, but it was also so chaotic.
Yeah, like I know that my mom's dad was baptized and my mom's mom was baptized because I think after her dad died, her mom got remarried and she got disfellowshipped, and then she was disfellowshipped until the end of her life. But yeah, it was so chaotic, so abusive. Her parents didn't really ever go to the meetings, so my mom and her older brother basically raised the rest of the siblings, and
Wow.
they would go to meetings. But yeah, she's all I really know are like some of the bad things she's told me. Like she told me that one time she got home I think from like high school something, and she went upstairs and her mom was in her bedroom playing Russian roulette with herself.
Oh,
Um, yeah, it was a very violent, abusive household. Her dad was, um, like I said, a non-functioning alcoholic, and he would get very mean. He wasn't happy about my mom dating my dad, so he kicked her out. And I think my dad had told me that before they got married, she moved into his house, and he basically slept outside in the driveway in his car. And then they just had like a quick courthouse wedding. So it was like, we're going to get in trouble. And so we have to make it official. So I'm not sure how they really got away with that. From what I understand, they didn't get caught or in trouble for that. But yeah, that
wow.
was
I mean,
kind
what
of,
an extreme circumstance. And,
yeah.
it
But then, like,
doesn't
where
sound
was
like,
the congregation?
was that?
But then, like, where was the congregation
Yeah,
to
yeah. I'll
help
say it
them?
doesn't sound like anybody else is taking her in.
No, from what I understand, they were kind of like trapped in that house. Um,
Wow.
and it was one of those pretty much when everybody hit 18, they got out. Um, so that was always something I'm like, why didn't the congregation step in and help you? Like, why are you living in your boyfriend's house and he's sleeping in the driveway and then you have to get married so that you have a place to stay? Like, her growing up life was chaotic.
Yeah. Oh, so a lot of times in discussing these things, you find out, maybe mom became a witness at some point in life because her life had been so chaotic and she was
Mm,
finding what felt like stability, or she was just very vulnerable, whatever the case may be. In this case, your mom came from that place, but maybe the witnesses were still, as she saw it, her stability in some way, even though it doesn't sound like they were really jumping in and super helping in that moment. But still, to have that belief system, to have something to lean on in those chaotic times, I'm sure she kind of felt attached to it.
yeah, seems like it.
And your dad just knew enough about it to know that he had to sleep in this car outside and that he couldn't be in the house.
I guess I like I said, I don't
Yeah,
have a lot of information
yeah,
on them. Because I know it was he from how he described it, he made it sound like he was studying and coming into it to be with my mom, and then somewhere along the way he just like picked up on it. I know that his parents were not happy about him becoming a witness. His sister was not happy about him becoming a witness. Like, they were very against it. His dad was an army guy. Um, and that, I mean, unfortunately, that's the extent I know of
oh sure,
that
yeah.
side of the family. But yeah, he came into it because of my mom and then just stuck with it.
Yeah, I mean, any knowledge that you have is always interesting because it just kind of shows it's the origin story to some degree, and it helps us to see where it helps you to see where your parents come from, right? They're
Mm,
coming from a lot of their own chaos, and they're bringing their own pass into then raising kids and being in this thing, and it just really helps flesh out the story to see that these were people that were probably hurting themselves before they ever even got into this thing fully or had a family and brought them into it. And it's just often that sadly hurt people end up hurting people, and these patterns progress. Um so then you are eventually born as the middle child, and you're being raised in this thing. Can you remember, before we kind of get into what it was like in your family and different things or at the Kingdom Hall, do you remember like how being one of Jehovah's Witnesses as a little kid made you see the world around you? Did you feel special? Were you just terrified of everything because everything was, worldly and satanic? Or, like, how did it impact you being a little kid?
Um, honestly, I hated it. I hated it. I was never really like, I'll hear some stories where kids were terrified because they're telling, you see the Revelation book or they're telling doomsday stories. And honestly, the Revelation book, I'd look at those pictures and I'm like, oh, these are cool. Like this woman's on the back of like a five-headed leopard dragon thing. That's cool. Um, but no, I don't think there was ever a point where I liked being a witness, or as a kid, I was like, oh, I'm special because I'm different. Like we're the chosen ones. It was, no, this sucks. I want to go have a piece of birthday cake, or I want to go like do sports, or be a normal kid. I, yeah, I never liked it. I felt very excluded from the beginning.
Yeah. That's tough when you realize that this isn't what I want. And it is funny to see the different reactions of people, and then it just shows that we all do have our own, personalities and our own psychology. And some people see the Revelation book or the Bible story book as a kid, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is so terrifying!" And trauma is how you react internally to something. It's not necessarily the thing, but our reaction inside to that thing. And so what's traumatic to one person may or may not be to someone else. But for you, you saw these books and you're like, "Oh, how cool. Look at that picture. Look at that. That's cool. I want to I want to ride on a five-headed leopard or whatever."
I think the one picture that always bothered me as a kid and even now is in the Bible storybook, the flood. The mom holding the baby on top of the mountain, and they're like screaming, and I'm like, why would God do that? Like it's a baby, and this is horrible, and that doesn't seem loving, or that doesn't seem fair. That picture was the one that it didn't scare me; it just made me feel very sad.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a horrible picture, and would
Yes,
be a horrible thing to do, wouldn't it? To
yes,
not only murder babies, but to kill all of the animals as well who didn't do anything to hurt anybody.
yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. But no, I can understand. Everybody had their different images that stuck out to them for whatever reason. Um, but it sounds like for you, this wasn't something that you liked. So let me ask then, so what was life like in the Kingdom Hall for you growing up? If this wasn't something you were super into, I don't know, did you give a lot of talks? Was your family present a lot? Were you really engrossed in this thing that you weren't super excited about?
um, I was, like I said earlier, I was kind of black sheep. I was the very easily forgotten child. My older sister is golden child. And yeah, my parents, they were very active in the congregation. I I remember I was 7 when I became an unbaptized publisher, and it was kind of like a look at how much your older sister and your older brother are doing. Like, why aren't you doing this too?
At 7?
They at 7, yeah.
Wow.
Um, they gave a lot of talks. My sister was super zealous and out in service every weekend, never missed a service, never missed a Saturday. But for me personally, it was like, okay, I'll do it because I'm going to get in trouble if I don't, but I am not having fun with this. I don't like it. I'm a big introvert, so from the beginning, getting up on stage in front of everybody, giving little parts, I was like, knees are shaking and I'm not enjoying this. It's not fun. And the praise afterwards, like the praise was nice, but it was like 5 minutes and then okay, moving on. So it was just it just wasn't fun for me ever.
It's sad that that's one of the few things you get praised for as a little JW kid. Maybe it's a part
Yeah.
on the meeting, maybe it's your baptism day, something like that, but it's very fleeting always, and you have to earn it, right?
Yeah. And I just how I grew up at home, everything was you have to earn it. There was no just love because of love, or definitely no unconditional love. Everything was it had to be earned, and I was a very stubborn and headstrong child, and so it just didn't go well for me.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry that it didn't go well for you because I'm sure that that was unpleasant, but Um, sounds like you had your own personality and such, and you weren't just going along with this thing that you didn't like. And it's a shame that you have to earn love in a witness family. Uh, that's control. You shouldn't have to earn. If you have to earn it, that's
Yeah.
control. That's not love. So uh, did you uh, did you go ahead and succumb to the pressure and start giving talks and stuff when you were 7, or was that part of you being an unbaptized publisher anyway? Because I can't remember.
I think it was part of being an unbaptized publisher. Like I remember it was always, really little part, like householder parts.
Yeah.
Um, I think when I gave my first talk where I was I wasn't the householder. I think I was like 10, which in my opinion is still incredibly young.
Oh yeah.
And it was pressure. There was a lot of pressure from my dad because he was an elder. Um, a lot of pressure from my mom because my mom is she is a very style over substance kind of person. Like everything has to look good. We have to look good. We have to look like the perfect, JW happy family.
That's what Jehovah's
Which
Witnesses are, appearance
this is
over
what they
substance.
are.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And I have always been a very substance over style person. So I did not fit their mold in the Kingdom Hall, at home. Just odd man out.
Understood. Well, you were more real, right?
Right.
I mean, even
Yeah.
as
And
a
they
kid, you were being real, and unfortunately, that's not going to be accepted in that environment. Um, so, did you at least have? Did you find any friendship, or was there anything at the Kingdom Hall for you, or did you like going out in service and going to McDonald's for break or something? Like, was there? Did you find friends? Did you do something? Was there anything there for you at all?
break time at service was the only time in service I enjoyed. As far as friends, I always seemed to make friends with kids who were the bad kids, and later got disfellowshipped. I don't know how many times I got pulled into the back room, and you know read, what is it, First Corinthians 15:33, the bad association spoils youthful habits. I
I'll
you
give you a
could
G on that. Good job.
Yeah, I've been quoted that scripture to many
Oh,
times.
I'm sure we all were.
So I'm like, those were the friends that I'm like, I feel like I can be my real self with you, and you're being real, and talking about theocratic things every single day at every meeting is so boring. And like, there's only so much you can talk about before it's like, what else is there? So that I had some friends, but it was always the watch yourself with them. And then there was one family that took a special interest in me, and they were a very sweet family. I loved them a lot. But it was a big problem for my mom because they favored me and not my older sister. Um, my older sister, like I said, was the golden child, and she was very favored by my mom, my dad, everybody in the hall. If I got attention and she didn't, it was a big problem.
Wow. I wonder, was it a big problem because your older sister was basically being seen as an extension of your mom and or dad, and so her
I
success
think
was
so.
really their success, and so they needed that to be acknowledged?
Yeah, I really think so. 'Cause she got baptized at like 11 or 12. She pioneered, like she was considered on the outside this spiritual giant and this huge JW success story. And yeah, she was definitely the favorite. There's a lot there that I'll get into more later, but yeah, my mom just, anytime I got special attention, it just bothered her. Um, my mom was not fond of me at all
Because
from
you didn't deserve
childhood.
it. You didn't earn that special
Yeah,
attention.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but it's
Sorry.
weird. Even if I did the things where I would earn it or deserve it, it just, I don't know. My mom just doesn't like me. That's more I'll get into deeper. it was just always an issue if I got attention and my sister didn't.
Well, if your mom doesn't like you, that's not necessarily because there was ever anything wrong with you. That's because there's something wrong with your mom. So,
And that took a lot for me to rationalize in my head. It was almost a lifetime of what's wrong with me? I'm not normal, and why can't my mom love me? There was a lot of that going on.
because your mom has issues. That's
Oh, she does. Yeah,
that's I know I can tell you that already, but I know we'll get it more into the story. But
yeah.
well, let's talk then a little bit about school, and then we'll get to your family. So what about at school? Did you go to traditional school, or were you
Yeah.
homeschooled? Was school a respite for you at all?
So yeah, I went to traditional school. It I enjoyed it socially. I was not great academically. I have dyslexia and dyscalculia, so numbers and letters. It's great. Um, so academically, I really struggled, and that was another thing where my sister and my brother, they both graduated like 4.0s, and so there was a lot of, well, why can't you be smart like them? Like, why aren't you excelling at school? But socially, I had a decent amount of friends. The house that we lived in, there were a few girls that lived right next door that were in my grade or the grade below or grade above. So we became really good friends. Let's see, anytime there was a birthday, they knew like, oh, Shayna's a Jehovah's Witness, she's not supposed to partake, but they were so nice and would like sneak me a cupcake or, you know, throw little Valentines in a paper bag for me and like put it on my desk on Valentine's Day. Like they tried to include me. And I really appreciated that. School was, like I said, socially, it was like a safe haven for me. Because I felt like I could be somewhat normal. Um, High school, I really wanted to go out for volleyball because I was really good at volleyball. The coach wanted me on the team, but of course, being JW kid, you can't do that. You can't take away from any spiritual things, spiritual time. So that really sucked. And eventually, it got to the point where, which that'll go in more with family stuff, but when I lived with my dad, he had his own business and he wanted me to just work for him. So I ended up dropping out of school. Um, so I think I finished up to my sophomore year and then I dropped out and started working. Um, so never finished school, but I had friends. They invited me to do things. I celebrated my 16th birthday secretly. They all took me to this little Mexican restaurant and made me cupcakes and got me gifts. And they were like, okay, just like don't write happy birthday or anything so that, Shayna's dad doesn't see. And like she can take this stuff home and be like, oh, we just had like a friend party. I really appreciated that the friends I had tried to make me feel included.
Oh, that's beautiful that
Yeah.
those people, I mean, kids can be really cruel and they can pick up on differences and they
Oh,
can
for
use
sure.
those to destroy you. But there are other kids who sometimes see that and really step up. And that's really cool that you had those kids that stepped up in ways and that wanted to make sure that you had opportunities and you were included. That's really nice.
Yeah, and like I said, I grew up in a small town. It was the hick town, so there were definitely bullies and jerks and hick town. What else are you gonna do but drink and smoke weed and fight? And I did get in a lot of fights at school. And it was mostly with bullies. Like I was a bully to bullies. I didn't like seeing other kids get picked on. Um, I I was still am very incredibly protective. It bothers me if I see something that isn't fair. People lie, bully. It just made me super angry. So I got in a lot of fights at school, to the point where I was getting in fights with guys. So there was one guy that he actually beat up my little brother, and I lost it. So I just like pounced on this dude, and we started punching each other. And so I've got my girlfriend's behind me screaming at him like, "You're not supposed to punch girls," and I'm on top of him like beating him in the face, and I'm like, "I'm fine, don't worry about it." So there was, and the funny thing is, I never got in trouble by my dad for it because he always told me, if you're gonna get in a fight, make sure you don't throw the first punch, but when you do throw punches, you throw the last punch. So it was there were times where I would instigate it. So I'm like, oh, I'll fight this person. So I'd, tackle him and bait him and get them to punch me first. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm good. I'm not gonna get in trouble by my dad. So
Wow. So, I mean, I, I love, in a sense, you can see, well, I mean, you're talking about standing up to bullies, right? And unfortunately, for a lot of us, the greatest bullies were in our own homes, and
yeah.
they raised us. And but you can see you were that, back to the black sheep thing, right? You were the person that was not afraid to take a stand and to stand out, and you stood up for other people where you could. I wonder if maybe even in ways that you couldn't stand up for yourself in other parts of your life.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I was terrified of my dad for the longest time. He was a very scary man. So that was a big one.
Wow. It's just interesting to watch how those things play out. A lot of people who end up being bullied are the people who are getting, you're bullied at school because you're being bullied at home and you have no self-worth. So the people at school kind of find you and then they start picking on you because you don't have that internal value. But it sounds like you were the person who was trying to stand up for those individuals at school.
Yeah. I remember there was one girl in eighth grade. She she had autism, and there were these three girls that just were torturing her nonstop. And so she heard like, oh, Shayna's really nice and also really scary. So a friend of hers who was a friend of mine introduced us, and she's like, hey, these girls are like attacking me, and I guess they tried to push her downstairs one day. And so then she started hanging around me, and these girls heard about my reputation, and after that they just left her alone. They were like, oh, we're not even gonna step towards Shayna. Like, no, we've seen what she's done, and we've heard the stories. So yeah, it was a lot of that, and it made me feel good. Just being able to take care of people. I like taking care of animals, taking care of people. It's the one place where I feel useful and appreciated. So finding the people that need help, I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. I got you.
Well, I'm glad that that kid had you and could finally feel a little safety. That's horrible. Yeah, schools are rough. Kids can be rough, but kids can also be, very, very awesome, right? And the way they protect each other, or maybe the way the kids showed up for you and made sure that you had certain things. So, or maybe they were just terrified of you.
Maybe they're like, hey, let's be nice to her so that she won't beat us. Oh, I look scary. There was another girl in the Kingdom Hall that some of her friends came when I moved into that hall. We're like, oh, let's go make friends with her, and she's like, no, she looks scary. I'm like, I promise that's just my face. Like, I'm nice. I just have that RBF face.
Understood. Sure, sure. Oh, and I mean, and as we're gonna get to, you have been through some stuff in your own life as well. Um, so let's jump. Oh, real quick, what was the business or whatever that your dad had that you were like that you left school for? What kind of business was it?
Just about what every JW man does: construction,
Okay,
cleaning. So yeah, he had his own construction cleaning company. So it was that.
okay, all right. I've done plenty of construction cleaning in my own life. I understand.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so you left for that. So What was life like in your home growing up? So we talked about the Kingdom Hall in school. What about at home? What was the temperature of the room? What was the atmosphere like there for Shayna?
It was incredibly dysfunctional and volatile. My dad is also an alcoholic, more so a functioning alcoholic. Like you said, he has his own business. So, um, but he was a very, you are going to do what I say, not what I do. Like, you're going to live under my roof, you're going to follow my rules. Um, there was a lot of favoritism with my older brother and older sister. So, with my mom, it was, I could never do enough. Um, it was like just my mere presence bothered her. Um, it was, with my dad being an alcoholic, he was a very angry and violent drunk. So I kind of relate him to like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. When he was sober, he was like best dad ever. Like I do love my dad so much. I have a very special place in my heart for him, and I think very fondly of him. And it took a lot to separate the sober dad from the drunk dad, because the drunk dad was very violent, mean, um, incredibly verbally and emotionally abusive. There were times where he would get physically abusive. Um, it was a very walking on eggshells kind of household. Never really knew what we were going to get when he came home. Is he already drunk? Is he in a good mood? Um, my mom is in like, her coping mechanism is denial. She's made comments of like, oh, I choose to remain ignorant. She is somebody who always, I think, loved the idea of a family, but didn't want to actually do it. I think she would be happy if she could be a stay at home mom with a full time nanny. Um, she, yeah, it was just, it was a lot. My siblings and I fought quite a bit. I remember one time I think I was 5 or 6, and my parents were gone, so my older sister was watching us all, and we were playing a game, and she decided to like tie up my hands and feet and gag me and threw me in the bathtub and shut the bathroom door with the lights off and just left me in there. And
Was
I
there
was
water in the
terrified.
bathtub?
No, thank
Oh,
God.
okay.
She just like left me in the dark room tied up. I don't know if she like didn't want to deal with me or what. But then I remember my parents getting home, and she untied me real quick and was like, "Don't tell mom." And of course I go crying to my mom and tell her what happened, and like, my sister didn't even get a slap on the wrist. It was like, oh, whatever, like, go away. But I think if I did the same thing to my older sister, then I'd be put in like a boot camp. Um, yeah, it was a lot of dysfunction. Um, my dad, I'm trying to think, he wasn't an elder for very long. He got disfellowshipped the first time when I was, I think, maybe 9 or 10. Um,
Oh,
and I think a big part of it was drinking and infidelity. He had um, an issue with infidelity, I think, even like before their marriage, from what I understand. Um, my parents kind of didn't really talk about their past a whole lot, at least with me. There were some stories that, my mom and my dad had told me. Like, I remember my mom telling me one time that she was pregnant with my older sister and she was looking for my dad. So she called the business that she thought he worked at, and they were like, oh, this person's never worked here. Like, we don't know who this is. And then she like later found out he was a bouncer at a strip club. Like, so
well, I
there.
mean, it's a sad thing to say, and I don't say it to demonize anybody, but all addicts are liars. They have to
Yeah.
be because to make that work internally, and there's often a lot of things that they're escaping from, and it's just a They lie to themselves, and
Yeah.
that's how they get by. And it's again a byproduct of the addiction, and it's really sad. So I'm sure he had a lot of, I mean, goodness, the way your parents got together, just everything. This whole thing is like not a good start. Not a good start
Oh,
to any of it.
it's a mess, and it gets crazier. But yeah, the first time he was fellowshipped, I don't remember for how long, because I was very young, but I know that my parents stayed together for that time. Um, and then he got reinstated. He would do a stint of like trying to get clean or quit drinking. It never lasted long because he is to the or was always to the point where like if he wanted to fully quit drinking, he'd have to be hospitalized for it. Um, I remember one time when I was a teenager, he tried to quit and he went 9 days. And the withdrawal was so bad, he started hallucinating. And I thought he was going to kill me. Um, so he can't do it on his own. Um, and I think he just started getting really good at telling the elders that, like, oh, it's under control or I've quit. And he would do really good at hiding it for a while. So then he'd get reinstated. And um, because he's been disfellowshipped, I think like 3 or 4 different times for pretty much drinking and infidelity. But when he got reinstated, things were good for a little bit. We never really went on big vacations. It was always like camping weekends. We'd camp a lot, go fishing, hiking. Those were our family times, and those were the good times. Like it wasn't permanently bad, but
Sure.
the bad definitely outweighed the good. Um, and that was unfortunately very short lived. My mom uh, we found out that she was having an affair with another elder in our hall who was actually my dad's very close, like our families were best friends. Um, we did a lot together. So it came out that my mom and this other elder were having an affair, and that just everything exploded even more after that. She left us for a little while, so all of us kids were just at home with our alcoholic, abusive dad, and she was off with this elder. So that was a huge bomb in the congregation when
Well,
that
yeah, I
was
was going to
found out.
say, so what was it like for you? You're a kid and you're in a congregation where your dad is being disfellowshipped. And, I don't know if you knew back then that infidelity was a part of it or not, or, I don't know what you were privy to. Obviously, you probably saw the alcoholism.
Mhm.
But what was it like as a kid having a parent in your home who was disfellowshipped, going to the meetings, your dad's disfellowshipped, or now your mom, things are exploding in the congregation. And unfortunately, Jehovah's Witnesses really, if one person's disfellowship, they kind of, it's like it leaks onto the rest of the family and everyone is seen in a certain way and nobody is helped. Everyone is kind of shunned around it and treated poorly a lot of times. What was it like for you being in that situation and watching all of this happen?
Um, I didn't really understand what was going on. We did lose a lot of friends because, like you said, it's like when one person is disfellowshipped, like the whole family, and it was like that. We lost a lot of friends, and I couldn't understand that. Like, um, why are we not going to so and so's house on the weekends anymore? Why are we not getting invited to these get-togethers anymore? Like, we used to always do that. So I remember feeling very hurt and just more of the exclusion. It was very lonely. Um, my older sister still got a lot of like people would kind of rally around her and like invite her to stuff or
Oh, because she was
like,
kind of
hey,
like established already in a way.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was in the congregation. I was very much the forgotten child, like just wallflower. Because I don't know, there's just something about being right in the middle. the middle children just are the forgotten child. It's a stereotype that I think
Oh, it
it
plays
lives
out.
up to it. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. Because I also had my little brother and my little sister, and they were the babies, and so then they got some extra attention there because they're the babies, and then older siblings are the golden child, and you know I was the just running around, um, forgotten one. But I was very confused and I was very sad because there were people that I loved, or looking back, thought loved and cared about me, and then it's, oh, your family's kind of imploding. We don't want anything to do with that. That's just drama. We're gonna go over here where it's quiet and their sense of normalcy. So yeah, it hurt because like you just feel thrown away, I guess, in a way. There's like I didn't do anything. Why am I getting treated this way? So it hurt, and it started a lot of I think honestly at that age, that young, it started a lot of unhealthy psychological, like, I'm not enough, I'm not important.
Oh, sure.
I remember being diagnosed with depression at 10 years old. Like it it really caused a lot of damage emotionally.
Yes. I mean, living that life is one of never being enough anyway in your own house. Then now you're taught that you're not enough in the congregation. Um, I mean, if nothing else, you're already in a home where there's alcoholism present, and that often creates a lot of codependency and often creates a lot of, I mean, being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is like its own addiction, and that can create just as much. And so you're always trying to get your value, your worth from people outside of you who are emotionally unavailable, who can't give it to you. You find yourself chasing love all the time, and
Mhm.
because none of it is just given naturally, and it's horrible. It's a horrible way to grow up, and it does do a lot of damage. And people spend a long time trying to build a sense of self worth and that they deserve to be loved again.
Yeah, and I noticed, I mean, looking back at it now, um, seeing how my parents were, it was like a lot of people didn't want to deal with us kids because they didn't want to deal with my parents. Like
Sure.
my dad and the alcoholism, and then my mom. I remember one sister in our hall who we spent a lot of time with her family. Um, I remember her talking to me one time about how she didn't like inviting my mom over that much anymore because anytime my mom was around, she was just so negative. Like my mom is oh, I mean, she just wants sympathy. Like she almost wants bad things to happen so that she can cry about it to people and get sympathy. And it
Perpetual
became
victim.
so, yes, that is what she is,
Well,
a
she was
perpetual victim.
victimized as a kid, it sounds like, in her own house,
Yeah.
and that role has carried on with her, and she hasn't moved past it.
Yes. So people, people got tired of that, which I can understand. It's
Sure,
hard, and there was a point in my life where I was like that,
sure,
and nobody wants to be around negativity all the time. So that affected us too, and that made us feel even more alone and kind of ostracized because you know sins of the father, like it affects the children.
sure. Did you guys have to, well, talking about the sins of the father, so to speak, did you have to, did you kids have to shun your parents in any way? Or like, did that get weird in some way? Especially with the golden child? How's the
Hmm.
golden child react
I know.
to the disfellowship parents?
Um, so I don't remember shunning them, at least when I was younger.
Well, you're not really
When
technically
I,
kind of supposed to in the
yeah,
household, especially if you're the kid.
yeah. Um, no, that got a little more weird when I was teenager. But as far as my older sister, I kind of remember her not being around a lot. She'd either be in her room or out with friends. Um, so I think maybe in her way she did, because she also got baptized so young. Like she was 11 or 12. But I think because of that, she was like pioneering, and she was, obviously baptized. People reached out to her more and was like, hey, we'll take you out in service, or hey, come spend the day at our house or sit with us at meetings. So I kind of remember that maybe like she did, at least to an extent, when they
Stayed
were,
away.
but yeah, but for me, it seemed normal for the most part. It was just, what changed was not really having friends anymore in the hall. But
Yeah, in the hall.
yeah.
Well, how do things progress? So, like, this has happened with your dad now, your mom now. Uh, so how do things progress for you? What's your story going on in the middle of all of this?
Um, at that time, I, like I said before, there were a few girls that I went to school with that lived next door. So I just spent a lot of time, building those friendships. And in a way, my parents, like, I want to say they didn't care, but I honestly think they just didn't notice. If, like, I'd be out of the house, so it's like, okay, she's out of the way. And then there'd be the times where they'd look outside and see me playing, and they're like, you're spending too much time with these worldly kids. Like, what are you doing? So then it eventually got to the point where I just spent so much time in my room alone, because it was like I didn't have friends anymore in the hall. They started noticing me building friendships with worldly kids, um, and that wasn't okay. So then it was just, well, stay in your room or just play in our backyard. Like, don't be associating with, the worldly kids. So it became very, very lonely for me. They said I was diagnosed with depression at 10, so I became very depressed. And I don't know, I don't know how much more to say other than just lonely. I didn't do a lot in the hall. We'd get in there and I'd just sit in my seat. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I would do the little householder parts when they had to. Um, Hated service. I would just kind of sit in the car. I really became just a wallflower.
Did kind of strikes me that you mentioned being the black sheep in your own family, but it sounds like your family kind of, other than maybe the golden child, were they all kind of becoming the black sheep in the kingdom hall, so to speak? I mean, were you all kind of ostracized, just period?
I think in a way for a little bit, because it got really bad between my mom and dad. Like, we lived in a domestic abuse shelter for a little bit, my mom and my siblings. Um, and I would think, like, why are we going into this abuse shelter when we have friends in the hall that I know have space in their house? Like, there was a couple that we were friends with that had a whole apartment downstairs that no one lived in. And so I didn't really understand that at the time, or I didn't think about it at the time because I was so young. Like, thinking back on it now, I'm like, these people that are supposed to love us and, keep us in this organization full of, we're the happy God, the loving God, like, they're not doing anything to help us. They see what's going on. And it's like they don't care, or they don't want to be bothered with it. They don't want their life interrupted. But yeah, my family developed a very bad reputation for sure. So it kind of affected, I think, all of us in a way for a little bit. Not so much my sister. It doesn't seem like it did much to her life at all. Um, but yeah, we were all very alone for a little bit because of that. It just got so bad.
So, I don't know this because I don't know the answer to this question, so I don't know where this enters into your story. How old were you when you ended up getting baptized?
17.
Okay, well, we'll get to there
Yeah.
then. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we're at roughly the 10-year-old age or so, 10, 11, whatever.
Yeah.
Were there any seminal moments, anything that was going on leading up to your baptism at 17? What was life like?
Oh my gosh, a roller coaster. So when, let's see, my mom had that affair. Her and my dad got back together later for a very short period of time. And then my dad got disfellowshipped again. And at that point, they started their divorce process. So I lived with my dad because my mom did not want me. Told me straight up that she didn't want me. Um, so I stayed with my dad. The rest of my siblings moved with my mom. Um, I occasionally would visit her on weekends. So then at home, at that time through the divorce, my dad wasn't really going to meetings. His drinking got heavier. So since he wasn't going, I wasn't going. And I started getting closer with the worldly friends. Um,
And it's just you
but
and your
then,
dad at this point?
yeah, just me and my dad. So my mom and all my other siblings moved out. And
Wow, I'm so sorry. That's so messed
I,
up.
yeah,
Um,
I stayed behind because my mom didn't want me. I know at one point I overheard her and my older sister talking, and she wanted to send me away to some like girl, like juvenile delinquent girls camp.
did your mom not like you because she couldn't control you?
I think so.
You were the one that wasn't playing her game right?
I think so. And my mom is very. I. It's hard. It's hard to say anything nice about my mom, honestly. She
Well, I understand. Yeah.
she didn't like me for a lot of reasons. My mom is a very small, petite lady, and I'm not. I'm Amazon 5'9", big curvy girl, and she never liked that. She would body shame me quite a bit. It got to the point where I was anorexic and bulimic for a very long time. And I was very outspoken and headstrong. And if there was something that I didn't agree with or that bothered me, I would speak up about it. And that bothered her. She'd be like, Shayna, just be quiet, leave it alone. Like, just do what you're supposed to. I'm like, no. So she didn't like me. She told me one time, Shayna, I love you because you're my daughter and I'm obligated to, but I don't like you. Um, I was 12. I was 12 when she told me that. Um,
Wow.
so
Jehovah's Witnesses, man. I mean, obviously, it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses, and there's a lot of extenuating circumstances here with the
mhm,
alcoholism and where your mom comes from and everything. There's nothing that the witnesses can't make worse. And they give a narrative for a lot of this stuff. And just your mom, like, um, the narcissism there, the
yeah,
you won't be who I want you to be, which is a reflection of me. Therefore, I'm going to basically shun you at 12 years old and kick you out of my life.
yeah.
Uh, which, again, is reinforced by everything that she learns in the Kingdom Hall.
And I was never. I don't think I have ever been considered exemplary in the Kingdom Hall. Maybe at one very short point, like around my baptism, they were like, "Oh, good, you're doing what we want you to do." Um, but I think that played a big part in it too. I wasn't somebody that like the Kingdom Hall could brag about or was like, "Hey, look at Shayna, she's doing pioneer hours or she's up there giving talks every week or whatever." So I was not somebody that she could be proud of. And then even outside of the Kingdom Hall, like at school, every single grade I barely passed. I
Well,
struggled
you
in
didn't
school,
make
so
her
that was
look good.
another one. Yeah, didn't make her look good. And with the looks, like I had a teacher tell her, like, "Hey, Shayna, we're pretty sure she's dyslexic. She should be in the special needs class. It could really help her." And my mom straight up told them, "No, because that wouldn't look good." And I'm like, here I have an education system trying to help me succeed, And you think because it's the special needs class, it doesn't look good, so it'll look bad on, like, it just, yeah, she's
A
all about
narcissist,
look.
a narcissist
Yes,
needs you, can't see other people, but as an extension of themselves, and needs those people to, again, to appear a certain type of way so that it reflects
yeah,
well on them because they can't separate themselves from the people around them. And
yeah,
they are the star of that play, and you are a bit role that might reflect on them and the quality of their play. And if you can't play right,
yeah.
then get out.
No, it was horrible. When I started like developing, I would wear very baggy clothes because I was
Of
uncomfortable with
course.
how my body looked. And she'd be like, "Well, Shayna, you look sloppy. You need to, dress better." So I'm like, "Okay." So I put on more form-fitting clothes, and she's like, and then these brothers started noticing me, and she's like, "Well, Shayna, now you're looking trampy." And I'm like, "I can't fucking please you." Like,
No, no, you
it's
can't. You can't.
no,
You'll never please a narcissist.
no. I was told by a therapist that um, a relationship like a relationship with a narcissist is the one relationship that you can't fix or shouldn't, like, you just need to let them go.
Yeah.
They're not going to change. You have to let them go. um so yeah, that's
You will
yeah.
spend your whole life destroying your own peace for
Hmm.
someone who wouldn't put you out if you were on fire.
Yeah, no, the control, it's doesn't there's no good in there. Like, I can't think of any truly happy times with my mom.
So yeah, a favorite saying that I heard, or I like the meme that says, you don't have to light yourself on fire to provide someone else comfort. And with narcissists, that's really what you end up doing. You will constantly light yourself on fire, trying to make them happy. They'll never be happy. And it's
Yeah,
sad. It's not like the narcissist is running around like the narcissist is born somewhere. We're all just babies, right? At some point, no one's born a narcissist, but
right.
through their own pain and the things they go through, then they end up filling this hole inside of them that develops with other people by pushing them down and making them feel bad about themselves so that they can feel okay for a minute because they're very insecure. Narcissists portray themselves as the most arrogant, secure people in the world sometimes, but mostly they're very, very insecure if they could be honest with themselves and others. And so I'm just really sorry that I mean, what a horrible thing for a parent to say to a child at such a tender age. And uh, yeah, you deserve better than that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it gets worse.
I'm
um
sure it does. I'm sorry.
yeah, it's
Uh,
she's a delight.
Uh, she's a delight. I like that. So, how did things continue on? I mean, now you're living with your dad, and she's gone off her way with everybody else. What comes from that? I mean, were you like 12, you said?
Yeah, I was 12 when they left, and I stayed with my dad. Stuff with my dad, it was so hot and cold and so inconsistent. Like, he'd have his times where wouldn't go to meeting. He was drunk every morning by 10 a.m. Would get home from work and just pass out. So it was like, all right, I'm making my own dinner. I'm going outside in the cul-de-sac and playing with my friends until I get tired. So I got into this habit of, well, we don't have to go to meetings, so we won't. And then one random weeknight, he'd come home and I'd be outside playing. And he'd yell at me, "Shayna, why aren't you getting ready for meeting?" I'm like, "Oh, we're doing that again? Okay." So go get ready for meeting, and we'd have a little stint of being regular. And then, we'd go into the hall and the love bombing would ensue. "Oh, we love you so much. We miss you. We're so happy you're here." Um, it's like, well, I live down the street. Why haven't you called or come by or done anything this whole time? But okay, sure. Um, so there was one sister who started studying with me for a little bit after school, and I hated that. I dreaded coming home to do that because I got into the habit of, all right, after school, I can just go hang out with friends and do my own thing, do what I want to do. So we started getting regular meetings for a little bit, and it was boring. It was not something I ever enjoyed. I'm trying to think. He got reinstated, and things at home were pretty good for a little bit. Other than, it was all right, every Saturday back out in service, every Sunday meeting, because that was when we had like Tuesday night book study and then Thursday night. But, like, it was just all the time you're there. So that became our routine, and I got really good at trying to I would do the like fake it till you make it. I'm like, okay, I hate this and I don't enjoy it, but I'll just pretend to like it, and maybe I'll latch onto it at some point. Never really did. And then let's see. And then his drinking got heavy again, and this was actually a point where I had to report him. I remember there was one time he was in the kitchen on the phone, and he was trying to buy prostitutes. So I heard that conversation, and I told the sister I was studying with, and she's like, well, you have to go to the elders. I was like, okay. So, I went and reported him, and he got disfellowshipped. And I remember the night he got announced, I just bawled, and I felt so guilty. And I was like, he knows that I reported him, so he's gonna beat the shit out of me when I get home. And nobody checked in to see if I was okay. It was oh, this is what you're dealing with? Okay. Is what it is. You've gone through it before, you're fine, type of thing, is how it felt. So he quit going to meetings for a while, but I continued to go.
Can I ask, were you punished for turning him in? I mean, did he? What are consequences for that?
Not really. I remember standing in his bedroom doorway, and he's sitting at his desk, and I remember talking to him about it, and I'm crying. And he was like, well, you misinterpreted the phone call. Like, you only heard one end of it, but you did what you felt you had to do. It was a lot of like passive aggressive comments. And I'm like, okay, well, if I misinterpreted it that bad, then how are you still disfellowshipped? Like, what happened in the meeting that, and I don't know, going into like their whole 2 witness rule thing, I feel like he would have had to admit something, because if I'm saying this on my end, hey, I witnessed this, but there wasn't another witness to it.
Well, you also don't know how many times he's been accused of this in the past, or
true.
Yeah.
And I know he had been before, because my mom had told me that she found credit card statements, and I think one of his disfellowshippings was that as well. So maybe it was this is a pattern. It's so confusing, and it's different in every hall, which is something that bothered. There's no consistency across the board. But yeah, that sucked, and I held a lot of guilt on to that, like, oh, I just ruined my dad's life, and
because your fault he did what he did.
Yeah, and I was 13, 14, so I took it very personally. But I know at that time, since I was going and studying, they started to kind of talk to me about like, hey, when are you going to get baptized? Like, you're 14, you're old basically if you're a teenager and you're not baptized yet. But I just had no desire to do it, because I didn't understand the weight of it, like what that meant to get baptized, but I just didn't want to do it. So I kind of, did the whole, oh, I don't feel ready yet. I need to feel it in my heart. And I just don't think I'm ready. So I was able to kind of skirt by on that for a bit. And then I think the sister quit studying with me because I just wasn't progressing enough, I guess. Like, she wanted me to get baptized, and since I wasn't, she was like, okay, well, we aren't going to study anymore. And so when she ended the study, I quit going for a while. And I got back in with all my worldly friends and doing that. And this was actually a really, really difficult moment in my life. I started dating a boy in my class, and he lived in the house directly behind me.
Oh wow.
So one day we were hanging out over at his house, and his older brother, who was 19, was there. I was 14. Um, and the guy I was dating left to go pick up weed or something. Like, we were smoking weed and doing all the like crazy hick teenager stuff that you do when you live in a hick town. Um, but his older brother was tripping on something, was very high, and he raped me. It got super violent. I actually tried to fight back. It got to the point where we were like on the floor, tussling, punches are thrown, scratching. Like, I tried really hard to get out of it, and he ended up pulling out a knife and holding it to my throat. And so he raped me, and I remember getting up and running home. Like, my clothes were torn, my face was all bloody and beaten, and I ran inside, and my dad was on the couch, and he'd been drinking, but he looks up at me, and just goes, "You look like you had a rough day." And that was it. Um, so that, I don't know, that really tore me down on a new level. Like, you see your teenage daughter running, her clothes are torn, she's got a beaten face, and she's crying, and your response is, "You had a rough day." Like, there's no,
There's
I don't know,
no.
I feel like if he was sober, it had to have been different. 'Cause he was just he was a dad when he was sober. So that really hurt. I remember going into my room and just curling up in the corner crying. And I ended up putting like a big like blackout blanket over my window, because my window faced their house. So if I opened my window, I could see this guy's bedroom. And there were a couple times where I'd open my window and I'd see him in the room, like peek out over at my room. And so that terrified me. I like barred up my window as much as I could and put a big blanket over it. And yeah, so I did that, and then took a shower, went to sleep. And by the next morning, like, my dad asked what happened to my face. And I was like, "Oh, I got in a fight yesterday," and left it at that. So it's like he completely forgot. He was so drunk, he forgot what happened. And I didn't tell anybody for years
Of course. I'm so
what
sorry. I'm
happened.
so sorry that happened. I'm so sorry that your dad couldn't be there in that moment. That's a product of his alcoholism, his emotional abuse, and
Yeah.
it's yeah. They're just not that it would have fixed what happened, but I'm sure it would have been nice to have had your dad at the moment and to have
Oh,
that
for
support. And it's just what a horrible thing. I'm sorry that all of that happened. And I don't. Did anything ever happen to that guy, or did it? It
not
just
that I know of. Um, I'm I know that there were some other girls who had been, I don't know if they were raped, but like, he had been rough with them, or just got too handsy when they didn't want him to. Um, and then I don't think they ever reported anything. I didn't report anything because I didn't
of course,
freaking
not.
know.
Of course,
Um,
the trauma
yeah.
it has
Oh,
its
I completely froze and shut down. Um, After that happened, I became pretty much a shell of a person. My value just went out the window. And I don't know. Sometimes I think like maybe it was a good thing in a way that my dad didn't remember or notice anything, because I kind of feel like if he did, he would have gone over and killed the kid. Like, which
Oh, I
isn't
mean,
bad in itself, but like,
yeah.
what am I gonna do if my dad gets thrown in jail? Now I have to go live with my narcissistic mother.
Well, I mean, whatever happened there, yeah, isn't really yours to.
No,
None of that is yours to hold. You just have to hold your own feelings about what happened, and
yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't have been your fault. Whatever, none of it was your fault. Period. So,
yeah. But that I didn't have anybody in the congregation that I felt like I could reach out to, and
sure.
this
Oh, gosh.
whole incident actually comes back in later with one of my judicial meetings, which is great. Uh, so yeah, that for a while was, um, yeah, I just kind of lived in my room in a shell, shut down completely. I'm like, people had to have noticed that I changed. Like at the hall, I would wait in the car until meeting started, and then I'd go in, and then as soon as the ending prayer was over, I'd go back to the car. But like nobody would reach out like, hey, what's wrong? Like, we've noticed you're isolating yourself or anything. Like nobody did anything like that, because
There's no
people
help,
don't want to be bothered, you know, unless
no
you're
love.
doing, yeah, there's no love. Unless you're, fitting the mold and you're following like that sheep, they don't care. Um, and I really picked up on it, I think around that time, that this is not some definitely not unconditional love, but this is not a very loving organization. It just cares about how you look. It's very superficial. It was kind of when I started picking up on that. Um, but then fast forward a couple of years, um, my dad's reinstated again. We're regular in meetings again, and I'm 17, and my dad tells me, if you don't get baptized, then we're kicking you out. Like, you're 17, you are too old. You should be baptized already, and you should be pioneering and all of this. And I already knew that like my mom didn't want me, so I went ahead and got baptized. Um, which looking back now, I mean, I regret it anyway, but it was really stupid because a few months later, my dad moved out and left me in that house alone. Um, so and now I got bad. He got rid of all of my belongings. Like, I slept on a sleeping bag on the floor in the living room, and my clothes were in a pile, and I had my dog, and that was it. Like, he moved out and left me there. Um, and then just called me one day and was like, "Hey, my realtor's coming to show the house. You have to get out." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I lived in my car for a couple of days, and the day I turned 18, I got my own apartment. Um, so I thought getting baptized was so stupid because I was going to be homeless anyway.
Wow. Gosh, it's just wild sometimes how patterns repeat too. Your mom was thrown out at such a young age,
Hmm.
and now here you are at a young age being left, being abandoned. Your dad just took off.
Yep.
Where'd he go?
He moved into a different house. Like, just, I
Like
just didn't
like
want to
he
take
just
me
started
along.
renting somewhere else or something?
Yeah, he just moved into another house and left me there. And what was weird is like I still worked for him and all this time. So I was like, why can't I move into this house? Like, what? I still to this day don't understand, because later on down the road, I moved in there for a few months. So something was going on
Yeah, was he into
that
something or doing something at that time that he didn't want you to know
had to
about?
be, because I don't know. It was a question I never got an answer to. I just got left in this house.
Okay,
And
and
I was like,
how in
okay.
the world How did you at 18? So he just bounces and leaves you in a sleeping bag and some clothes. How did you go get an apartment at 18? Had you been saving money? Did you how did you get in?
Yeah, I'd been saving because I worked for him technically since I was 13. He would like pay me when I'd come work after school. But since I dropped out, I worked for him and I just saved, like, I didn't really have any bills. So I just saved all the money that I could. And the car that I had was one of his, like, he had a couple of work trucks and then he had a work car. And so I just had the work car that he sort of gave to me. It was paid off and everything. So it's not like money was owed on it. But yeah, I saved up and I found a shitty apartment that was like, okay, yeah, you've got enough money, you can move in.
Smart
I,
girl. Good for
yeah,
you.
I'm like, I don't know how I made it work, but I made it work.
Well,
Um,
I think that deep down, or maybe not even that deep, you knew that the only person who was going to take care of you was you. I mean, that's been the
yeah,
story of most of your young life so far. Is it's Shayna is the one who's going to take care of Shayna.
yeah, pretty much. And it's I'll still have moments like that where I really struggle asking for help.
Of course you do. Of course you.
So yeah,
Yes.
so it's a lot of if something's going on, I'm like, I'll just figure it out. Like I'll find a way to make it work. Like I won't ask for help. One, because I also think I'm just very scared of uh, being what's the because of the abandonment issues. I'm afraid of like getting my hopes up of relying on someone and then them
Sure. You don't want
failing.
to be vulnerable.
Yes. So I'm like, I can't rely on anybody anyway. I have to do it all myself. Like that's something I feel like I'll just forever be working through. Um,
I hope
but
you
yeah,
find more healing around that. I know it can happen. But I also I hope that that's a reflection of you finding healthier relationships with
yeah,
people who can take care of you. We're all gonna need we're all gonna need help at some point in our lives. We're all gonna get old and things happen. Uh, uh,
yeah,
but I mean, good for you for having your own back and being, it's just that it comes with that side of, well, now can I trust anybody? And healthy vulnerability is its own thing. Beautiful book called The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown that I always recommend to people I work with in my coaching practice. Yeah, there's there's a beautiful life to be had with people who can help, but certainly vulnerability was used and exploited when you have the wrong people around you.
hmm yeah, for sure. I feel like I'm getting better at it. I've got
Yeah,
healthier people in my life.
the path.
It's just yeah, it's just a struggle.
Healing is a process, not an event. It takes
Yes,
time.
yes, it does. Um, but yeah, at this point, I'm in my own apartment and I'm actually regular at meetings. I'm going to a different congregation. It's the one that actually my mom and my siblings moved to because it was just the closest one to my apartment. So I'm going there and
Mm.
I made a couple of really good friends. One was a pioneer sister. So um, I was like, all right, I'm baptized. I've got a clean slate in Jehovah's eyes. So I'm gonna try. Like I'll actually put effort into it and try. Um, and I did, and I still hated it.
I was gonna say you've got
I
this opportunity now at 18
I know.
to fly solo and be free, but isn't it interesting that
I went back.
yeah.
Um, 'Cause it was like it's what I knew.
Sure,
Even if it
yes.
sucked, even if it
The
sucked and
devil
I
you
hated
know
it,
is
it's
better
what I
than the
knew.
devil you don't, right?
Yes. Um, So I did. I went back and I tried, and things were pretty good for a little bit. That hall, I learned real fast. I know I probably can't say the name of the hall.
No, you can say it. Go ahead.
Okay. So the name of the hall was Shoal Creek, and it had a nickname called Shield Click because it was an incredibly cliquish hall that like all of the other kingdom halls around were like, oh, if you go here, you're in like the bad rep hall, which I didn't know at the time. So I'm like, oh, of course I am. Of course I'm in the hall that is like looked at negatively by everybody else. And I found out later that there were a couple of girls that told somebody, oh, we're going to go to this hall because you can do whatever you want and you're not going to get in trouble. And I was like, great. So that's the hall I'm in, which that was not true. You could not do whatever you want and not get in trouble because I did whatever I want and I got in trouble. But yeah, oh my gosh, the elders in this hall, like, I thought my dad was an alcoholic. Um, they'd have parties and get-togethers, and I'd see some of these elders get like so drunk that they couldn't walk. Um, and then they're like counseling and judging other people for like, hey, you've got too much facial hair. Hey, your dress isn't like the skirt on your dress is slightly above your knees. That's not appropriate. And I'm like, sir, I just saw you like black out and throw open a trash can in the corner like 3 nights ago. It was
And Jehovah's Witnesses can drink.
oh man. Yeah. I'm like,
I
I've gone to
don't.
concerts and parties and my
I
word.
don't drink because alcoholism runs in my family, as I understand it. So I've just stayed away from it. It's not something I enjoy. But
Hmm.
I have never had a problem not drinking around the people outside of Jehovah's Witnesses. They're like, "Oh, you don't want to drink? Okay, cool, whatever," you know.
Yeah.
Um, or they might even be so respectful that they're like, well, then I won't drink. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, you're not offending me in any way. Please, you have a good time. Don't worry about it. But like with Jehovah's Witnesses, if I said I didn't drink, they're like, oh, but you could, right? Like,
They get
we could
offended
get you to
if you don't
drink because we
like they get
really need
offended if you
you.
don't drink.
Yes, we need you to go as far as what we're about to do. We can't have somebody here sober, right?
Right. Oh my word. It
Yes.
was yeah, I remember one time I was at this family's house and their dad was a ministerial servant. But he was like in tight with all the elders. And I invited my older brother over and I was like, hey, he wanted a drinking buddy. So I was like, okay, well come hang out at this house. And him and my friend's dad are drinking and like they got so oh man, it got scary. They got so drunk that my older brother was like vomiting in their sink. I had to go clean it up. And then we had to carry him and put him in the trunk of my car, get him to his apartment, and carry him down into the apartment. And I stayed there overnight and he started like foaming at the mouth. And I'm pretty sure he had alcohol poisoning. And obviously they're like, we don't want to call my mom because, that's going to be a huge issue in itself. And I'm like, I don't know. Do I call 911? Like, this is scary. So I just stayed up all night watching him and put a bucket next to him and hoping he didn't die. And then the next day we're at meeting and this brother is, doing the opening prayer or the closing prayer. And it's like, oh my gosh, it was wild. But that was the normal with the brothers in that hall. It was insane. The drinking. Oh my gosh.
I knew a sister who, and I mean, there were reasons for it. I honestly, a really sad story. She had lost her husband. It was very, very sad. But she would give her talks drunk, and I think everybody knew that she had a problem. And but her husband had been an elder and he died tragically at the Kingdom Hall. And Nobody wanted to address it, which I mean, yeah, I also get on a level, like it's a very, very sad thing, but there were a lot of other brothers and sisters that would just put it down. I remember after the memorial going out with people, and
Oh
they
my.
would put it down at some restaurants, and I was like, I thought this was supposed to be a somber, respectful night where
Mhm.
we celebrated what Jehovah and Jesus gave for us, and everything in a very respectful way, and you all are getting lit.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
wow, this is interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses, there's a heavy drinking culture, isn't there?
Oh, I was very surprised by it because the hall I grew up in was a very small town, like older hall. Um, our family was pretty much like, we were the little kids of the hall. But then this new Kingdom Hall I started going to, it's more in the city, and it was night and day difference. Like stuff that they would do in the middle of the Kingdom Hall, you'd get counseled for at my old Kingdom Hall, and it's like, all right. So that was a big wake up call for me on just the mindset and how different each Kingdom Hall is. Like, oh, they're not all the same. They don't all have the same rules and regulations. It's more like guidelines. But yeah, that I hit a little point where I got really depressed and didn't go for a little bit. And then I remember when I did go back, I had an elder come up to me um, as soon as I walked in, and he was just like, "Oh, I'm surprised to see you here." And I'm like, I've just been having a really hard time. Like, it'd actually be nice if I could, talk to a couple people, get some encouragement. And he was like, "Yeah, well, we all have hard times," and just walked away. So I was like, okay, I thought you were supposed to be like shepherding us and taking care of the congregation, but it was very much nobody had time for anything serious. It was a very big party hall. Um, and that was just really weird to me and kind of like off-putting. Um, and honestly, I probably would have left permanently, but then of course the way things go, that was the Kingdom Hall where I met my ex-husband. So then when I met him, I continued going. So I was like, oh well, here's this brother that I like. He's going. Which was funny, when we met and started dating, he wasn't baptized, but I thought he was. Just the way he carried himself. And I remember noticing him because of a Bible reading he did. He was a really good reader. And um, so that oddly just caught my attention. And, I thought he was cute. So developed a little bit of a crush. And then I had a friend who was friends with his friend. So the four of us kind of started hanging out and developed a friendship there. And him and I just really hit it off. So at first, he told me that he didn't want to date because he wasn't baptized. And then that I was like, oh, I had no idea. I just kind of assumed you were because you're my age, and I was 19 or 20 at this time. So it's like, you just assume that someone's baptized at that age because everyone's doing it at young teenage years. And, I was considered old when I got baptized at 17.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely correct there. It's just striking me right now that now here you are at 19, a baptized sister, and there's a guy who's basically the equivalent of studying who is now interested in you. It's just interesting how life repeats itself.
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about it that way. But yeah, and there was a lot of similarities now that I think about it. We really struggled to find like chaperones. So we would hang out like at parks or in public places. Or there was one time we pulled out like a twin bed mattress from his dad's house, and we like slept outside on the driveway on this mattress. It was funny because like a school bus drove by in the morning, and these kids are like looking out the window pointing at us, and we're just sleeping on the driveway on this mattress. It was weird.
So
Okay. And that was okay?
I guess his dad was pretty lenient. Like, he obviously didn't want us alone inside together, which was a little weird, but we could be alone outside.
So let's put them on public display and that's okay? That is the weirdest thing. That's so strange.
No, it got weirder. Yeah, we'd go hang out at like little public parks, and there was one day there a cul-de-sac across from where he lived. We went and just laid in the middle of the cul-de-sac for the whole night and just like stared up at the sky. We didn't fall asleep. But the next morning, like, the people are waking up to go to work, and someone pokes his head out and he's like, "Are you two okay?" Like, we're just laying down in the middle of the street. Like, we're fine. We just didn't have anywhere to go.
Wow. Did nobody want to chaperone you guys because he wasn't baptized?
I wonder. I really don't know, because we tried. We tried to get people, or we would try to like do stuff with my family, and nobody was really interested. So
Well, I mean, heck, you asked an elder, it sounds like, for a shepherding call, and he was like, nah.
yeah.
Suck it up. I mean, I've been there. I've actually asked an elder for a shepherding call before and had him look at me derisively and just shake his head like, no. And it never happened. Yeah,
You have
it's
one
weird.
job. Like, shepherd the flock. That's your one job.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's again, where is the love in this organization? Okay, so you kids, you two crazy kids are sleeping out in cul-de-sacs and in the driveway.
Yep.
So where do things go from there?
So we're talking about, talking about the next steps, marriage and all that, but he needs to get baptized first. So I remember originally what was it? He talked to a couple of elders about getting baptized, and we were just assuming he would, because we made every meeting, he'd go out in service. Like, he was hardcore. He studied for every single part of every single meeting. Like, even the sisters' talks, he would research. So, which on the inside I hated, because I'm like, I don't want to study and do this. I just want like a life partner and get out of my hellhole. And but he really put in effort, and we just assumed that they would okay him for getting baptized. Well, they didn't. And I think it came down to they wanted him to have more service time. Was why they said that. And then I know that my mom had talked to a couple of the elders too, because he told me one day that he was out in service and a couple elders were like, "Are you sure you want to marry someone who's going to have issues with headship?" And it's like, why would—
Whoa.
yeah,
Whoa, where did that come from? Your mom?
my mom, 100%. So
Well,
I'm
now
like,
you know. Well, there you go. There's your answer as to why she's treated you like she has. Wow.
yep. She told them that I would not make a good submissive wife, and that we probably wouldn't have a good marriage and all of that. And so yeah, they pulled him aside and they were like, "Are you sure you want to do this with someone who would have
Your mom
issue
is
with?"
something else.
Oh, she's a delight.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was fun, and I remember him talking to me about that. And honestly, I didn't have an issue with the headship in a way. Like, I told him, okay, this is a partnership. Like, we'll talk about things. I will ask questions if I'm not okay with something. I'm not just gonna blindly like, you do this because I said so. It's like, no, we're gonna talk about things. We're gonna compromise. And so I guess in that sense, yes, I do have an issue with headship. I would not be a good JW wife.
Well, you should have an issue with the absolute
Yeah.
headship and misogyny of Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah.
Oh,
I
there's
had
so
a
many.
problem with that as a brother.
Yeah. It's yeah.
I want a partner, not somebody. I don't want a job. I don't want somebody to micromanage and to
yeah.
boss around. You're not my employee. That's horrible.
But that's that's what my mom was saying that I needed to be and I would have issues with being. But no, him and I, like, we got along, we were friends, and I was like, I want a friendship and, the marriage. But so back to that, they denied him getting baptized, so that kind of threw a wrench in our timeline of when we wanted to get married. So they were like, oh, just keep up your service time and, ask again for the next assembly, because I think it was like a winter, the December assembly where he wanted to, and they told him no. So then the next one would be in the spring, which was in April, I think. Yeah, it was in April, because we got married a week after the assembly. So they said he could get baptized. We did a really quick, just really small wedding. There was like maybe 30 people. It was at a park. We spent no money. I think in all, the total that we spent on our wedding was maybe like $200. It was very fast and quick. But also, I think a couple weeks before the wedding, we spent one night at a park, and he was going through something because he was on medication for like ADHD and I think some antidepressants, and he went off it cold turkey and it affected him. And we did end up sleeping together before the wedding because we were both in the mindset of like, well, we're getting married anyway, and just the way the night went. Again, didn't have a chaperone, so we were alone, and we ended up sleeping together. And we're like, well, we're getting married in a couple weeks, like we'll just keep it quiet and no big deal, you would think. But then the day after my wedding, I found out I was pregnant. So that was a fun little surprise, and trying to not let people know about that, because I already had a bad reputation and they'd assume, which, yeah, as soon as my mom found out I was pregnant, she assumed and told her sisters, and they were like, oh, you know that she was already pregnant, right? But since we didn't say anything ourselves, elders didn't, we were able to keep it so quiet. Elders didn't find out. There was no judicial thing there at the time. So now we're married, going to the hall. We weren't really happy with the Kingdom Hall because I'm like, it doesn't seem like they care. And he had friends in a different Kingdom Hall that he wanted to go to, so we ended up switching halls. And it was polar opposite. I would call this one, for the most part, very loving, and there are a lot of people. It was the hall we stayed in for our whole marriage. There were a lot of very loving people that truly seemed to care. Obviously,
as much as a witness can.
Yeah, as much as a witness can, because they are all shunning me. So
again, as long as you look like them, act like them, think like them.
Yes. But at the time, it was what we did feel very included and very accepted. And there were a lot of, get-togethers and activities, and just we enjoyed it more. We were happier there. The elders seemed very kind. So that is where we're at for a while. And, we're regular. I end up having my daughter, and everybody's all excited, like, oh, there's a new baby. Like, I remember this entire Kingdom Hall threw me a baby shower, and they didn't even really know me yet. Like, I couldn't tell you any of their names, and we're going to this house, and I have everything that a new mom could need from people that I'd never met. So that really,
that's good. Nice.
It was very nice. And I don't know if you'd compare that to love bombing, but looking back at it, it was a lot of love and like acceptance. So we really enjoyed that a lot at first. And then with a new baby, you kind of like fall behind on service and talks. And our daughter, she was a really easy baby, but as soon as she hit toddler age, it was like terrible twos were just permanent from age 1.5 on. And I remember one meeting, I was there with her by myself. I don't remember if my ex-husband was sick or why he wasn't there, but I was in the back room because that's where I would sit with a baby to disturb everybody. And she started getting a little fussy, and there was this brother in front of me, and he turns around and he goes, "Can you get that baby to be quiet?" And I'm like, "Why are you back here? Like, this is where all the moms and the kids sit, and you're the single brother. Like, go sit up front if you want it quiet. Sorry." So that put a bad taste in my mouth pretty quick. Even though it was just one brother, but like also nobody really said anything. So I got discouraged pretty quick. It also seems like, once you have a kid, friends don't have as much time. You don't get to do all the things you did before. Now you have an infant to tag along with you and take care of. So all those feelings of like abandonment and loneliness came back. And the one thing that was different here was there were a few people that reached out and would come visit and would try to include me. So that I was like, okay, this hall is better. Like, maybe there was just something off with the last two. This is what it's really like. This is real love. And so that kind of kept me in for a while. And then 2016, my son was born. And then things really started to go downhill after that. Not because of my son, like I love my son to death, but
your son was the downfall.
No, just the stress and
it's life changes, right? And
it was huge life changes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was 24 and I now have 2 children and a husband, and the pressures to perform and to look good and
again, you don't even like this thing that you're involved in.
No.
At best, it's a social club.
Yeah, that was because I've heard on other episodes of your podcast, you've asked them like, was it always real to you or anything? And I think honestly, it was never real to me. I did a fake it till you make it type thing, and I just never made it. I don't know if I ever believed in God. I didn't like the rules. I didn't like the strictness. I never understood why you could celebrate your anniversary, but not the birth of your child. Stuff like that. This never made sense to me. Like, why are birthdays so wrong?
Stop thinking, Shayna, and just go along with it.
Right?
Independent thought. What are you doing?
Yeah. The critical thinking, I could never just shut that part off and follow.
You're not accepting the headship very well.
I'd have a real problem with that, apparently. But yeah, it got to the point where I was depressed all the time. It was hard to perform. Mm-hmm. So I got on a medication, and it was antidepressants. And I don't know if the dosage was wrong. It just didn't work for me, but it turned me into as much of a zombie as a person can be. I remember like my kids would, be next to me crying or want something, and I'm just like, okay. And there was no life in me at all. So meetings were an issue. Nobody wanted to do anything with me anymore. And so I got, I started talking to people online. And then I met up with a guy that I met online, and we ended up hooking up. So I, like, either that night or the next day, like, I immediately told my husband about it. I want to say I felt guilty, but I didn't feel anything at all. I kind of went into what my therapist at the time, when I told this whole story, he called it a manic episode. But I didn't feel anything at all. I told my husband at the time, like, hey, this happened. Obviously he was hurt, but he didn't really react when I told him. And talking to him about it later, he was just trying to, I don't know if I want to say compartmentalize the situation, but he was trying to just figure out the best way to go about. Like, he didn't want to immediately end the marriage. I think he could tell I needed help. So he didn't really have a reaction. And then I think because he didn't have a reaction, I took it personally. It was like, I almost took it like he didn't care, because he didn't react.
I was gonna say, did you? I mean, you don't have to answer this question, but certainly it has happened enough to be a thing where people sometimes are in a marriage and they cheat hoping to get a reaction because they just are in a relationship with someone who doesn't seem to care and is going through the motions, and they're looking for, like, do you care? If I did this, would you finally, like, act like you cared about me in some, like, do you care at all? That's a thing that happens.
No, I for sure. I don't know if I did it that first time because of that reasoning. Because there's definitely more to this arc of the story.
Oh, okay. And certainly there can't, maybe there was mania involved, or maybe you felt so numb because of the meds that you were trying to feel something or what. I mean, yeah, there's a lot that can go into that.
I think that was the majority. I felt so numb that I was like, I need to feel something.
Yep.
And
Sometimes people are just trying to feel something in their relationship period because they realize they don't, and they're trying to spark anything, even if it's anger. At least
yeah,
you're showing you care. But yeah, I could see that as well. Medication.
and the way he grew up and just how he is, he's not really a super affectionate person by nature. Whereas I, on the other, like, I crave it. I'm like, I need a hug. I need, you to be next to me. That fear of abandonment just overwhelms me. So I'm like, I
Well, that
need
could be
some
fear of
sort of
abandonment or just naturally wanting affection. I don't know.
that
Depends.
that too. Like my love language. I did the love language thing. Mine is
Oh
like
yeah.
physical affection, quality time.
Yep.
So I also, with the stress of 2 kids, he was working. I think I was a stay-at-home mom at this time. Didn't have much of a social life. So it was a lot of factors where I was just like, I need to feel something. I need some kind of physical connection. So that I think that's what started that and happened there. And but he was like, well, we need to, tell the elders. And because it was a infidelity issue, he got to sit in on my judicial meeting. And this was one where I did kind of appreciate our elders, or I trusted them a little more, because I know a lot of these kind of meetings, they ask, those questions, the really uncomfortable, personal, and they didn't ask me those kind of questions. And
The sexually abusive questions.
yes, very abusive questions. They did not ask me those questions. But I remember the whole meeting, I was so deadpan. Like, I didn't give them what they were looking for. The whole repentant, crying, I'm horrible, self-deprecation type monologue. But because the medication, again, I was a zombie. I didn't feel anything. And so they just fellowshipped me for, you're not you don't seem repentant. I remember one of the questions that they asked me outright was, do you even want to be a witness? And I was just like, I don't know. Like, I had no feeling. If I could be a color, it would be gray. So they just fellowshipped me. And I remember my husband went back to one of the elders another day and was like, hey, I know you can't change your decision, but when she wants to get reinstated, I want you guys to keep this in mind. Like, he told them about the medication and how it was affecting me. And the elder was like, that makes so much sense now. She wasn't herself. Like, yeah, obviously we can't reverse the decision, but we will keep this in mind when she wants to get reinstated. And so I was disfellowshipped in the beginning of 2019. And because of my, like, I quit the medication. And so because of my come down on that and now being completely isolated and alone, I just went even deeper into the manic episode. And I pretty much cheated on my husband like that whole year. It was a lot of just, I didn't have any connection to anybody. It was a lot of dudes on apps, and I'm just like, all right, I'll meet you, let's do this, and then bye. And I would tell him after every one, and I still don't really know why he didn't leave me. He stayed with me through all of that, and talking about it later, he was like, I saw this as, you know, you're not doing this for pleasure, you're doing this to hurt yourself. Like, there's something wrong, seriously wrong. Which was true. Like, I didn't get pleasure out of any of it. There was one night where I went to this guy's house, and we had GPS on each other's phone at this time. So he followed me, and he just said he had a bad feeling, knocked on the guy's door, and nobody answered all this. Well, I ended up getting date raped that night. Obviously they drugged me, so to this day I don't know exactly what happened, but I know it got bad. I woke up in a lot of pain and bleeding. And so after that, I was like, things really need to change. Like, I need help. I went to one meeting for like Sex Addicts Anonymous. And I was like, no, I don't feel like this is a fit. I don't feel like I'm a sex addict. I feel like it's something else. Which, according to the therapist I saw at the time, it was something else. It was a manic episode of just self-destruction.
It could have been. You're also, I mean, good Lord, at 14, something horrific happened to you. Your whole childhood, horrific things happened to you, and you've devoted your entire life to something you don't believe in. Yeah, self-destruction could be a part of that. Sure.
For sure. So I started getting help, but I was really struggling with the isolation, with not being able to talk to family, friends.
Doesn't help either.
No.
Take your support system from you.
Smart. They do. And then they don't want you to find a support system anywhere else.
No, they want to.
Yeah. Can't do that. So I remember there was one morning I woke up, and it was just, I was done. I didn't want to live anymore. I was fully prepared to take my life that morning. But very uncharacteristically, my children woke up early and like crawled into my lap and gave me hugs and were like, "Mommy, I love you." And I just broke down crying. So I went to a therapy session. My husband came with me at the time, and, you know, I had told him what I was planning to do in front of the therapist. So the therapist was like, well, we have to admit you because you had a plan. You were going to carry it out. We have to admit you. So I got admitted to the hospital. And I was in there for 5 days, but I remember telling because my husband came and visited me every day. And I remember telling him, hey, I know I'm still disfellowshipped, but it would be really great if, you know, one of the elders could just like reach out and talk to me, or I could just have some encouragement. So he was like, okay, I'll go tell them, or I'll ask them. And he asked an elder, and the elder was just like, well, our hands are tied, too bad.
You're disfellowshipped.
Yeah, I'm just, well, this is what really bothered me is this elder that said that. There was another sister disfellowshipped in our hall, and I would see him regularly talk to her, like in the foyer at the Kingdom Hall. He would talk to her at assemblies. He would talk to her, would pull her aside, ask how she's doing. So that bothered me. So I was like, well, why is he checking up on her like almost every single meeting? She's disfellowshipped. I'm over here ready to end my life. I'm in a hospital and he can't give me any kind of encouragement or anything.
Now he has rules.
Yeah. Funny how that works. Now the rules matter. So that really hurt. And I don't think I really ever came back from that. Yeah, I just didn't understand it. I'm like, you'd rather me kill myself than, say, hey, please don't do this. Like, we care about you. So that really bothered me. And it was like, how can you be led by this God of love who values life, but, because you made this mistake, go ahead and end that life. It really bothered me. So then, because that was in December of 2019. So in 2020, I wrote a letter for reinstatement. I was going back to meetings enough. And of course, I turned in the letter and then COVID hit. So they couldn't meet with me. I think, it was July. Yeah, it was like July of 2020 that they finally met with me. So I went through half of this year having turned in the letter and then just having to wait because they can't meet with me.
And they have to. They couldn't do it over the phone. There is no technology that exists where you can talk to somebody who's not in your house.
It had to be in person.
I don't know how we're talking right now.
I think they do it because of recording. Like, they can never like fully ensure that you're not recording in person, but I don't know. They're so paranoid.
They just do what they do. They don't care. It's just whatever they want to do at the moment.
They do. So I finally have my meeting for reinstatement, and this was the worst judicial meeting ever, and it's supposed to be the one for reinstatement. It's 3 different elders. That wasn't the 3 that were on my original committee. And the elder that's like heading it is, oh my gosh, he's horrible. So I'm telling them, my story of, what I did, what's happened. Yes, I'm repentant, this, and, they hear about the few rape stories. And this elder looks at me and is like, well, you know why those things happened to you, right? And I was like, what? You know where this is going.
Oh, enlighten us, asshole. Let's hear the story. Why does it happen?
Yeah, you know where this is going. So he asked me, like, why this happened? And I'm like, because of Satan? Like, what do you want me to say? And he's like, Shayna, you know why these things happened to you. Like, whose fault was it? And I was like, the men that raped me. Like, okay, they did a bad thing, but whose fault was it that you got raped? And I look at the other 2 brothers and they just are looking at each other, not saying anything. And I'm like, my fault? And he's like, yeah, it was your fault that these things happened to you. And it was pretty much got bullied into saying that if I wanted to get reinstated. So he said that to me. The other 2 brothers said nothing. They looked at each other like, I saw their faces. They were like, oh my God, did he just say that? But they wouldn't speak up. So
God, what a dick. What a horrible human being.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. The victim blaming is, it's unreal.
Well, and just it's not just it's victim blaming, but it's also the power, the authority that you will submit to my headship, that you will do the thing that I want you to do. I want you to say something, whether you believe it or not. And I have something you want, so I'm going to hold it over your head until you do what I want you to do. It's its own power trip, just like rape or anything else. It's horrible. What fuck that guy.
Yeah. No, it was It was pretty bad. I remember I had to wait outside in the parking lot while they made their decision. So I'm in the parking lot bawling, and I have to pull it together before they call me back in. So they finally call me back in. They're like, well, since you've taken accountability and since you're repentant, we will reinstate you into the congregation. And I was like, great, I'm going home. And I got home, and what is supposed to be like, oh, happy and exciting, I'm back. I walk in and I'm crying, and my husband's like, what happened? And I told him what it was said, and immediately he was like, what the hell? Like, that's wrong. It felt like there was nothing we could do. It was like, I have to, like you said, submit to this or I'm not reinstated. So, kind of just let it go for a minute. But I started later, they wanted me to study with a sister again, because I don't know if that's a routine thing. You come back and you have to study again.
Because you forgot everything that you knew because it's so complicated, and you have to be taught again. Again, it's just another power move. You just, let's make you submit to this too.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. And I'm like, this is, there's no new information. They're new light. It's just a fancier way of repeating old information. Like, sure. There's nothing new. So I'm studying with a sister. She's a pioneer sister. Her husband's an elder. I end up telling her like what was said to me in that judicial meeting, because I was like, this is wrong. Like, you can't be saying this to girls. Like, you can't be saying this to young girls who, teenagers. Like, you just can't. So I told her, and she was bothered by it. And I told her I wanted to talk to her husband about it, because her husband was an elder. He wasn't on either of my committees. So I talked to him about it, and he was like, yeah, I agree that, that was wrong. We'll talk with him. You'll get an apology. He shouldn't be saying things like that. I was like, okay. So I'm waiting. I never get an apology. I think even my husband talked to another elder about it, and it was just swept under the rug. Like, just ignored. Like, all right, well, I guess they can say this to all these young girls. So we let it go for a little while. And let's see, it's 2020, so meetings on Zoom. So it got really easy to like bail at a meeting because you're not in the hall. I remember like we'd put Zoom on, but we'd have our screen off and it's on mute, and we would just do what me and the kids would do, whatever. And my husband never really enforced like, we're going and this is what we're doing. I don't want to call him like super passive, but he's just not very like, I set the rules and you follow them type of person. So it was kind of easy to like, hey, I'm not doing this. And he wouldn't push. So we me and the kids kind of did our own thing. And I'm trying to think. Things with my husband and I weren't great for a while. Just our communication was bad, and I didn't want to be in the organization. I was getting tired of faking it. He was still very in. So there was a lot of, cracks there, minus the infidelity issues. So 2021, I'm not really regular anymore. What was it? In the summer, I am pretty much at the point where I'm like, we're separated, but not fully separated because there's no grounds. And I just didn't want to be in the marriage anymore. I didn't want to be in the religion anymore. So I met my now partner, my now boyfriend, and him and I got together. So then, told my ex-husband about it, and he's like, well, you have to tell the elders. We were supposed to take our kids on vacation in North Carolina to visit family and my kids to see the beach. And so I asked him like, hey, can you just let me wait until after this vacation, and then I'll tell the elders. And I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks away. And he was like, no, that's too much time. You have to tell. So I did. And this was the one judicial meeting that I don't remember it at all. I don't remember who was on the committee because it wasn't the same as my other ones. I don't remember going to the Kingdom Hall for the meeting. I don't remember any of it because in my mind, I was just done. Like, it was a formality. I'm going to be like, hey, I did this, disfellowship me, I'm done. So they did. They disfellowshipped me. And I'm trying to think. In that meeting, I do remember bringing up what was said at my reinstatement meeting. And still nothing happened there. So that never got an apology for. My ex-husband was told that like once a year elders can reach out to disfellowshipped ones to see how they're doing, or somebody will reach out to apologize to me, and then never happened. So I dropped it all at that point. And then it was also the same time I came across like Lloyd Evans videos and he was the brother from Bethel. I can't remember his name, but he has his like critical thinking videos.
JT and Lady C?
No, because I've seen some of theirs.
No. I'll be honest, I'm too busy doing things to keep up with all the content, so I don't know who all does what, but it's fair.
I can't remember his. It's just a single brother, and he used to be in Bethel, and he does a lot of videos on critical thinking. That's all I can remember. But I found some of his videos, and because I never really considered the witnesses like a cult. I would never call them a cult at the time. I was just like,
that's a hard thing to say.
It is. In my eyes, I'm like, oh, it's just a really strict religion that I just don't agree with. And then when I found all these videos is when I learned, like, holy shit, there's so much more going on here. Like I saw the Hulu show, the Cults and Extreme Beliefs, and they had an episode on Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's when I learned about all of the CSA stuff. And then I found out that there's a pedophile or child, somebody in the Kingdom Hall that I was in, and that was not information that was ever released to anybody. And I'm like, okay, is this a person that was around my children? And I found out that we went on a vacation with family, and there was a family member who would spend time in jail for being a pedophile, and they were around my children. And I'm like, why is this not, like, that was the big eye opener for me. All of the CSA stuff, the ARC, all the crap that Jeffrey Jackson said, and
oh yeah, it'd be presumptuous of us to say that we're God's only spokesman on earth, or whatever the case it was. Yes.
Kenneth.
Even though we say that all the time, I'm not going to say that under oath because it makes us look crazy.
Yeah. So all of that was really the bomb drop for me. Covering that up, because I was like, well, you're no better than any other religion that you're trying to say, oh, we're the true religion, and then shit on like the Catholics who they have all this molesting issue, and it's like, well, you do too, and you're just covering it up. And somebody had said that the witnesses use the same lawyers as like the Scientologists, but I don't know if that's,
I think it was as the Catholics. I think they hired some of the same lawyers as the Catholics had hired in some.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. But yeah, and
there was truth to that too.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't see how you're not reporting because you don't want to bring reproach. How is that better than reporting and fucking getting rid of the child molester and protecting your congregation? Like, you would think that would be applauded, not.
They're protecting the organization over the individuals in it.
Yeah, I learned real quick, like, children are at the bottom of the totem pole, and
I don't care about
the religion. Not at all. Like, there's nothing, they talk about in the Bible, like, against, men don't sleep with men don't sleep with animals. They don't say anything about don't do anything to children.
Yes, the
No.
most vulnerable humans on earth are somehow omitted from the scriptures. That's
Ah,
kind of interesting.
yeah, well, what in the scriptures where they have them like pillaging villages and stuff, and they're like, only take the virgins, and well, who are the virgins? Like, it's the young girls. It's obviously not, you know, older women of legal age by today's standards. Like,
Well, they were
so
just
yeah,
taking them to help them, right? That's what they were taking them for. And
they're,
we needed to
they're,
mention their virginity for some reason. I don't know why, but
they're
uh,
saving them.
just saving them. Yeah, just good people, just
Yeah,
good folks saving a bunch of virgins for themselves for some reason.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
at
that was
God's command.
super loving.
Super love.
But I'm very much at the point where I don't think I believe in God. I'm a just be a good person. I believe in karma. I'm pretty sure I believe in reincarnation. I've seen some interesting stuff, and it's funny, like my daughter, I try not to bring up religious stuff that much. I'll just ask them on their own, like, hey, what do you think about this, or what do you think about this? And my daughter on her own one day was just like, God's not real because, like, science can't prove that he's real. You can't see him or hear him. And she's 9, and she just like came to that conclusion on her own. And I was like, oh, good for you. Like, I'm not worried about you. My son, on the other hand, is very impressionable, and my ex-husband's grandma is a very hardcore witness. And she'll occasionally take them. So it's all right, we'll spend the day watching Caleb and Sophia and, talking about Jehovah. So then they'll come home, and my daughter's like, this was stupid. We talked about all this God stuff that's not real. And my son's like, Jehovah is real. And so that's a little bit of a struggle, but I mean,
Because I guess today you share custody with your husband.
yeah,
Ex-husband.
we've got 50-50 custody, and I didn't talk too much about his story because he's got some of his own stuff, but he's not in anymore either.
Oh, he left too.
He did. When I started kind of deep diving into my research, I didn't want to like bomb him with the apostate material because I am very much considered an apostate, which my boyfriend's always like, hey, that's cool. Like, being an apostate's awesome. So I sent him some articles, and I think the one article that did it was, what was it? It was one of the ones on rape, and I can't remember the name of it. But telling them that you're considered giving consent if you're not like actively screaming and fighting. So it's like one of those articles. That was the big wake up call for him. And then the ARC and all of that stuff. So he's out now too, and he's actually in the middle of releasing his own like podcast, just telling his story of leaving. So that was actually a relief because I did not want to spend my kids' lives like raising them one way here, and then they have to go when they're with him here. So
let me just throw something out there. Now that I know that you're both out, grandparents aren't necessarily entitled to kids, and be very, very careful because Jehovah's Witnesses will steal your children.
Yeah.
That they will indoctrinate your children. They will take an impressionable kid and turn that kid inside out. It's powerful enough to do it to human adults. It's powerful enough to do it to kids. So be just a word of caution. Be very, very careful, because I'm the guy who sees the people who come to me in my coaching practice who've lost their kids to this mess.
Yeah.
And it's horrifying.
No, that's always been a little bit of a fear in the back of my mind.
It's not to be played with.
No. Our situation's kind of weird. Like, my family shuns us completely, kids and all. They don't have They don't reach out to kids. They don't have anything to do with kids. They don't care.
They're Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah.
Good. You're keeping abusers away from them. Nice. Are there abusers are keeping themselves away from them? Awesome.
Yes. Even if we weren't witnesses, I don't think my mom would be in my life. Honestly, I kind of feel like she's glad I'm disfellowshipped because now she doesn't have to talk to me for any reason.
Sure. I mean, and honestly, a big part of the healing is when you get to the point where you realize you don't want them in your life.
Yeah.
That's when things start to really change.
For sure. Like I have told people, I'm pretty sure if I got a call right now that my mom passed away, I wouldn't even cry.
Oh, yep. Been there with my own dad. I get it.
Yeah. I do miss my little brother. Him and I got close, but my older sister, I don't really miss anybody. My dad, that one's hard for me because there was so much abuse there. But I look at him as like, he was an addict. That's not who he is. When he was sober, he was great. Like he would come into my room in the morning to wake me up, blasting Elvis, singing and dancing and cooking me breakfast. Like I have good memories of my dad when he was sober. So I miss those. And he is one where if I do call him and I need something, like I need help, he will answer. He's never going to go out of his way to talk to me, but if I needed help with something, he recognizes like, this is my child. He'll answer my call, or give me help with something. Like he came to my work one day because I needed help with a lawnmower and showed up and helped me fix it. So I love my dad very much. And that one is hard for me because I don't know, we just went through so much together, me living with him alone and all of the ugly. And then there were I hold on to those little good moments. Cause he wasn't him when he drank. So I can.
Oh, and that's the interesting thing about that is you can say the exact same thing about Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes.
That is that they're addicted to something too, and they're victims of it, and it rules their life. And there's good moments there, but there's also all of these bad. And what we ultimately have to do is just decide for ourselves, today, the relationship that we would have with any of these people, is it something that's going to be healthy or is it going to be toxic? And that's all we can really do is decide for ourselves if that's a relationship that would be good for us or if that was a relationship that would be unhealthy today and going forward. And if there's things that need to be talked about around the past, you could. But I mean, that's why, like, even if my family today was to call me and say, hey, we left Jehovah's Witnesses, cool, but we got some stuff we need to talk about before we could ever have any kind of relationship. And I need to see that you've changed and that you're not who you once were, because you can take the person out of the congregation, but that doesn't mean that they're not still holding on to all the witness values. And I'd have to see, is the relationship safe for me or not? And one of the problems for a lot of people is they take those good moments, which are real and should be honored, but they create an idealized version of their witness family based out of those best moments, and they keep reaching out for that and keep getting hurt. And it's really sad to watch, because as long as they're witnesses, you're not going to have healthy relationships, really.
No. And like I said, if all my family left and were like, hey, we're out, I'm like, okay, like I'm pretty happy with how my life is going right now. I don't need you to come and wrecking ball your way into it.
Yeah, you don't have to come steal my peace. I wish you well, but we don't have to be family today just because you suddenly decided to change.
Yeah.
Hey, quick announcement here. If you're enjoying getting to know our guests today and you'd like an opportunity to know them better beyond their story here, I actually have another podcast of sorts called The Back Room. Yes, like taking somebody into the back room at the Kingdom Hall. I'm taking each guest now into the back room and we're going to have a little conversation. 5 quick hitting questions and answers from them about subjects and topics that maybe we're not always discussing here on the podcast. So if you'd like to get to know them more, you have an opportunity to see a little video of each individual from the time that you join. And you also get to interact with these individuals because if they're willing, of course, if they're comfortable, we'll provide their socials and you guys can connect and support one another. And maybe you make a new friend out of it. I don't know. But, I know people really connect to a lot of the guests here, and it's a great way to connect even more. And while you're doing so, you're also supporting me and all the work that I put into this, all the time, the money, the energy, and you get a bonus for it as well. So go to patreon.com/shunned and just join the back room tier and you'll get all the information sent right to you after the episode is released so that you can go further and go deeper and get to know our guests better and perhaps they'll get to know you too. Speaking of which, now let's get back to our guests.
And I forgot, there was like one piece of the story that was kind of important that I got kind of jumbled. But
Oh, sure, go.
when I was 18, I had lost my apartment because I got really sick and missed a lot of work and couldn't afford to stay there. So that's when I moved into my dad's for a little bit. And there was one night his drinking got really bad and he kicked me out. So I went to my mom's and my mom was like, well, you can stay here for tonight, but you need to figure something else out because you can't stay here. So I felt very like, okay, I have nowhere to go. I'm not wanted anywhere. So I overdosed and was like convulsing on the floor. My stepdad found me. So my mom had gotten remarried.
Mhm.
And he called 911. They showed up and my mom, my stepdad, and my sister are all in the kitchen watching this happen. They took me to the hospital, pumped my stomach. They admitted me into the hospital for a little bit. When it was time to get released from the hospital, I had asked my mom to pick me up, but it was during a meeting. And so she was like, well, I'm not leaving meeting to come get you. So my dad picked me up and the whole way home, he kind of like trashed on me a little bit and was like, oh, you couldn't take one pill to feel good. You had to take a bunch. And so I just cried. And then my mom picked me up later so that I could get my stuff from her house. And the first thing she said to me was not asking how I was doing or okay. She was like, Shayna, I don't understand why you had to fake that to get attention. So
Shayna, you deserve better than all of them.
Oh, yeah, it took a long time for me to feel that way. I very much felt like, well, this is what I deserve, or like,
Well, because you were taught that. I mean, that's how people like that maintain control and they maintain
yeah,
relationships by shaming you into submission. But no, Shayna, you deserve better than every one of those people.
yeah. I don't know how I made it out of there alive. Not for a lack of trying, but
Well, I'm glad that you did. I send the biggest hug. I mean, my goodness. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. I mean, you know, uh, talk to, I know you've listened to the other episodes of Shunned, and so there are other people that you've listened to who've been through a lot of similar things and come out the other side too. And I wish I could get you all in a room someday. You'd all see each other, and you may not feel worthy yourself, but you would think they were worthy of something better, right? And the reality is they'd be looking at you thinking the exact same thing. And all of us deserved so much more. We were all failed by the adults around us, who,
yeah,
to be fair, were probably failed by the adults around them. And they just repeated the patterns, but somebody's got to be the person to stop it. And good for you.
break the cycle.
You are breaking that cycle, and I'm happy that your ex-husband is out as well. And happy, I hope that your kids get to be a participant in the continuation of the breaking of that cycle as well, and that you all can go live happy lives. You don't need them. You don't need the family from the past to be happy. You don't need a belief system in something specific to be happy. You can just be happy internally. It's kind of a nice thing. It's simple, and you realize the only person you ever needed was you, and everybody else just adds to that.
Yeah. No, I have really enjoyed like listening to your other podcast episodes, and it's really made me feel like, oh, I'm not alone. And
You're not.
there's people that completely understand the things I've gone through. Our stories might not be exactly the same, but there's been a lot of like, we can understand the feelings of abandonment, the abuse, the people that have failed us that should have been there to help. And I really, really appreciated being able to listen to all of that.
Yeah, and you've all had the internal strength um, to say no at some point to that. Instead of, and we were taught to say yes to them, which was an automatic no to us our whole lives, and then to finally start saying yes to us and no to them is life changing. And it takes courage to do that, because it's completely flying in the face of everything we were taught, going against the grain, swimming against that current. And that takes a lot of internal strength. So it's something to feel good about, and to realize the same thing that your mom hated in you growing up is one of the best parts of who you are, and something to be appreciated. And that goes for so many of us. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's definitely a what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type situation.
If you're willing to make the most of it, yes, absolutely. So can I ask, so, ending this on a positive note, I mean, certainly you've been through a lot. What are the good things in your life today? What do you love about life?
Um, just getting to do what I want, what makes me happy, letting my children have a normal life. They've gone to birthday parties, and my daughter started softball, and my son wants to play soccer, and so having the opportunity to like give that to them. And also just I'm in a very happy and healthy relationship. We've been together for coming up on 3 years, and um, I am very grateful that my ex-husband is out because it makes raising the children so much easier. But
Yeah,
no, things are
good
going
for
really
him.
good.
I hope he has a happy life too.
Yeah. Things are going good. I just went on a really awesome vacation last week with my boyfriend. We saw Zion National Park, Grand Canyon, Antelope Canyon, Capitol Reef. Like we just went all over and saw some really beautiful places that I didn't think I'd ever be able to do in the organization, because you never have freaking time to do anything fun for yourself. So yeah, things are just good.
Well, I love hearing that, and not only are you not only are you able to explore the world and with your kids, and to give them these good things and these normal opportunities to be themselves, but you're also not giving them that abusive ideology. You're not giving them, your kids don't have to worry or walk around as 7-year-olds afraid of an Armageddon, or feeling like they're not good enough. You can give them self-worth and things like that as well, so that they don't need to be anybody other than themselves. All the things that you never got, and it's beautiful that you'll get to give that to them now as well. That's awesome. I'm happy for all of you. You being courageous enough to be yourself, the self that they tried to shut down, they tried to shut the door on. That is what's going to allow all of you to have a better future and a better present.
Yeah, breaking the cycle. So
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for telling your story, Shayna.
yeah, thank you for having me and listening.